Any company that says, hey, if you're not our customer and here's a promotion to become our customer, but I'm not giving that promotion to my existing customers, has the wrong mindset. They're the ones that are out there thinking about the next prospect, but not thinking about the current customer that they have. And that's the difference. Whether it's in how you focus on your customers and how you schedule and make the time, whether it's how you promote and reward people for being your customer, those are the things that really make the difference. And ultimately, you become the flame or the moth, right? You were the flame, Lee. You were the place that people drew to because they saw how wonderful it was to be your customer. Most companies are the moth and they're out there chasing and chasing. It's better to be the flame.
Hello and welcome to the Show Your Value podcast, where we explore the art of value creation in three macro buckets: material value creation, emotional energy value creation, and spiritual value creation. I'm your host, Lee Benson, and today my very special guest is David G. Ewing. David is the CEO of Motive and is a trailblazer in customer experience innovation. With over 25 years in the industry, he has transformed insights into substantial revenue for 500 plus clients. A Harvard cum laude engineering graduate, his leadership has earned Motive a top spot on the Inc. 5000 list. As president of the Entrepreneurs Association in Austin, he is dedicated to empowering fellow entrepreneurs. David believes that the best customer experience wins, and I could not agree more. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. For our listeners, before we dig in, and I'm really excited about this customer experience piece because I think so many people really miss it, companies that is. At a high level, kind of walk us through your career. And, it's interesting with your engineering degree, your first job at NSS Technologies, about 3 years, it sounds like, as an engineer, and the rest of it was leadership management and all of that. But walk us through that and how you got to where you're at today at Motive.
Yeah. So I come from parents of, my parents were entrepreneurs, and I guess entrepreneurship was something that was just going to always be a part of who I am. And the best advice I got from my dad was go to school and get a degree that is going to provide you a toolkit for everything that you're going to do as you go forward. And so instead of majoring in business, I did major in engineering just because I do love technology, and I wanted to make sure that any entrepreneurship I did was more in a technical realm. So I got a phone call when I was a senior in high school, and it was a coach saying, son, how would you like to play football for Harvard? Which is a pretty cool call to get. So, I took him up on that offer. And while I was there, I studied at MIT and Harvard. And so I got an engineering degree, and I worked at NSS, which was a manufacturing plant in Detroit, every summer. And, so I would do that, play football and learn engineering. But after that, I was really clear that what I wanted to do was, I really wanted to get into entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to go to Silicon Valley first. And RB Weber was this really cool boutique kind of, ex-McKinsey, consulting firm. And I went there and had some of the best mentors of my life. They were really, really wonderful people. And I did some kind of 27 or 28 engagements with them while their venture capital arm was investing in all these really cool Silicon Valley tech startups. And so I was a part of that action right out of the gate. And that was a ton of fun. From there, I went and followed one of the RB Weber partners to Aperion, with Asim Abdullah, who's a really successful entrepreneur from VEO Systems and Commerce One. And that really became my first kind of operational role. And I played every jack of trades role that you could think of there. I was business development, I was sales, I was pricing, I was planning, I was, part of the engineering team. And it was just kind of everything. It was a ton of fun for a couple of years, but the dot-com winter kind of knocked that one flat. And that was a real big spin point in my career where I got knocked down and, I needed to do something new. And I just decided after that I'd had the pieces that I needed to put something together for myself. And so I started my first company when I was 24, San Francisco Consulting Group, which eventually became Motive. It's actually been one continuous company. So I had my first payroll in September of 2001. So I'd hired my first employee, I think in August. And so 9/11 hits and I'm making payroll. So, that was quite an experience, but really what came out of that really intense 2001 period was, just a lot of discipline around making sure that when I got a customer, it was so hard to win them that I never wanted to let them go. So I think that's really where customer experience for me came from, is it came from that gritty, difficult time of making sure that, that once you've finally acquired that customer, you've got them for life. And that just really became kind of an ethos in the business. And, in 2005, we picked up a partnership with Oracle, and it was really around some of their customer experience technologies. And we just found so much more scale and power in those things. And so what grew from 2005 to the present day has been a constant evolution of the systems and the people and the change management to really make sure that you can create a culture in a company that wants to appreciate their customers, that wants that customer experience that wins, and realizes that there's a huge payoff for it, right? Like the customer lifetime value levers are huge. And so any company that can move those in a small way, reduce some churn, increase some upsell, do some things like that, that's what really brings big value. And so the motive of today, which has just been rebranded since we left California, we're now in Texas, is really all about customer lifetime value and making that happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's an interesting lesson. If I got my research right, getting ready for this discussion, you were one day away from not having a partnership with Oracle.
Yeah. It was actually, we started partnering with Siebel, and, they called me on a Friday and said, listen, David, we had been, haggling over the agreement, little points and whatnot. And they just said, look, take it as it is right now. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you how, but if you don't take it today, it's never coming. It's gone. And I was like, I see what's going to happen here. So I didn't know, but I knew. And so, yeah, on Monday I signed it on that Friday, and Monday I was an Oracle partner.
Yeah, that's incredible. But isn't that an interesting lesson? Like that was a major turning point for you in your business.
It was because, Oracle brought a whole set of different mindsets to us around scalability and security, and just a much larger set of customers. I mean, we went from working with small companies pre that partnership, like, local companies in California, a couple of tech startups and whatnot. But then once we became an Oracle partner and we got certified there, then it became, and I can't talk about all the companies, but a few I can talk about, like Visa and Johnson & Johnson and like all these other, much, much larger companies were, who they were introducing us to. And that was a game changer for us, so that we could continue to have fun with those small tech startups, but we could also work with, some of the biggest companies and with some of the most sophisticated problems in scale and customer experience.
Well, also, in terms of a partner and leveraging what we have, and I'm a firm believer that all of us have as business leaders, owners, way more to leverage than we even know. And so the financial crisis happens, 2008, you lose all your business overnight. You call Oracle, and what do you have? It's like, yeah, we have, whatever, hundreds of clients that could use you. Within a week or two, you've got, 5 or so new clients running. Like, what an amazing partner to have. So what are the lessons there for our listeners here? Because a lot of them, are senior leaders or they're founders, they own businesses. That's interesting.
Yeah. The lesson that I have from that is, I really had to drop a lot of my pride and become a lot more humble at that moment, because, when you call your partners and say out loud, like, I'm not going to have a company in a month or two if I can't find some customers. And, this financial crisis has wiped us out. Like, I just need your help. Those were hard words to say. That was a very difficult thing for me to do. It almost felt like I was, begging at that point. And quite frankly, I was in a really tough spot in October of 2008 and November of 2008. And yeah, thank God that the partnership and the relationship was there. And when I asked for help, I was really afraid that I would just get, by, but instead the relationship carried us through, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. Because yeah, I was at my end at that point, and that was the bottom, and we turned from there, and it was really incredible.
Well, I mean, to me, there's two things. There's, oh my gosh, we have this. What can we leverage? We have this partnership, and we're going in. Hey, we really need help. We could go out of business. but also all the way along, even if things are going really good, we can appropriately, in a really win-win value add way, ask our customers for referrals. And it works, right? So why aren't we doing that all the time anyway? It's almost like we get caught up. We're doing work. We have enough to pay the bills. Everything's fantastic. We're moving along, and we kind of stop the business development piece. And then, oh my gosh, we need more revenue. Now let's scramble and figure it out. Why not have that strong all the time and keep it in balance with everything else? So talk to me about that. I mean, was that part of the transformation that came out of this, something in that direction?
Well, Lee, what I've noticed is, that there are goals that we set for ourselves. And if we're not careful, the goal can become a limit, right? So it doesn't matter what the goal is. If I want 5 customers this month, when I get to my goal of 5, if I get there early, there's a tendency to just relax, right? To say, that's great. Like, I got to my goal. I'll worry about something else with my life, as opposed to saying, well, I got to 5. I wonder if I could get to 10 this month. Like, when do you push things and go forward? And I think asking for referrals is part of that complacency, right? When we get complacent, or we think that we're going to make the goal, we lose sight of the fact that that goal was artificial, right? We could always go higher. We could go for more. And so trying to balance that with also, being content with the things that we get. I find that that's a push and a pull, that if I never celebrate my wins, I burn out. But if I also just get, happy with my goals, I get complacent. And I think it's that back and forth is a little bit of a trick, to balance. And I think that, yes, when asking for referrals, that is an active step that is, actively thwarting complacency. There's just no reason why someone shouldn't always ask for referrals, no matter whether you're going to make your goal this month or not. Like, I think that it's something that customers are happy to do if they believe in your product. And it's actually better than an NPS test to just find out, do they really like you or not?
Yeah, that's the truth right there. If they're telling 2 friends or more, even without you asking, that's the real litmus test, I think. Around. Yeah. So digging in a little bit on customer experience. So I one of my companies, aerospace company, we had thousands of customers in 60 countries, had about 500 team members in the States and others dotted around the world. And we beat our competitors every time. I mean, we would pay attention to them, like, how are they pricing, how are they performing, because but we mainly focused on our customers, and our competitors would only focus, or at least primarily focus, on us and not their customers. And we won every time. And I was even asked later by somebody who was hired as a senior leader, a very large perspective or actual competitor, like, what are you guys doing there? Because I was hired a whole year to figure out how to beat you. And then I got fired because I couldn't figure it out. Can I come sweep the floor? And I said, it's so simple. I focused on the customers. You focused on us. So why do you think it is, David, that so many miss this wildly powerful thing? Like, they'll intellectually say they understand it, but their actions don't match it. What's going on? You're in the middle of this.
Yeah. I think it comes down to something really simple, right? Which is, the prospect that's out there that you haven't won today represents something that you don't have and that you want, right? And what do we do with that? Well, we make that very urgent. We all know it's important to talk to our customers. We all know it's important to talk to our prospects, but the urgency factor is the trick, because it's always urgent to win the prospect, and it's never urgent to talk to the customer that you have. And I think it's that simple. If you have good processes and you schedule the time to talk to customers, it'll happen. But if you don't schedule time to talk to customers, it's never going to happen. And I think that you illustrated, Lee, a really clear mindset that, you felt like talking to the customers was your priority. I'm sure you had scheduled times, you had rhythms, you had check-ins, you had surveys. I bet you had all kinds of different things that happened. But unfortunately, a lot of companies don't do it. And you can see it in their marketing, right? Any company that says, hey, if you're not our customer and here's a promotion to become our customer, but I'm not giving that promotion to my existing customers, has the wrong mindset. They're the ones that are out there thinking about the next prospect, but not thinking about the current customer that they have. And that's the difference. And so whether it's in how you focus on your customers and how you schedule and make the time, whether it's how you promote and reward people for being your customer. Those are, the things that really make the difference. And, ultimately you become the flame or the moth, right? You were the flame, Lee. You were the place that people drew to because they saw how wonderful it was to be your customer, right? Most companies are the moth and they're out there chasing and chasing. It's better to be the flame.
I love that. I mean, that's so insightful. And my guess is, if you were to spend more time as an organization focusing on existing customers than getting new, you probably would grow faster. Like one simple example in the aerospace company that I brought up, when I looked at the total market share or wallet share from each client, we're getting about, I would say out of, 80 of our customers made up, the majority of our business out of 2,000 customers. And we were getting about 22% of the work that we wanted. And marketing at one point was just trying to get more stuff coming in. I said, no, focus on that. And our business doubled in a couple of years and we got up closer to 50% with those. So do you have any lessons from the front lines on things like that work really well?
To me, I think about a couple of different stories in my past. So one of them, for us at Motive, and this is kind of not a story of our customers, it's a story of us, is, we try to do interviews with all of our customers on a periodic basis that works for them, right? Some of our customers love to chat with us. And so for them, we'll talk every month. Others, it's quarterly, some are even annual. But what I've noticed is that there's never been a meeting that I've taken with a customer to talk to them about just what's happening and how it's going that hasn't resulted in more business, right? You talk to them and the opportunities just come pouring out like a Vegas slot machine, because they're either telling you about things they could be doing with your current products and services that they're not doing. So right away, there's a volume increase, or they're giving you insight into things that you could be doing to innovate. And, of course you have to do your homework and figure out, is this an innovation that's only relevant to this one customer and no one will ever want this besides them? And those come up. But most of the time customers are telling you about things and they can at least be, telling you they're like a mini market research project about what customers like them have. And so when you're in your target market and you're really clear about your target market, it's free market research. And, so instead of paying $20,000 for some other firm to write a paper, I can spend 1 hour on the phone with my customer. I could probably get even far more actionable insights about what's going on. So I'm not surprised you doubled your business. I've seen the same thing happen with us where, that happens. And I'll tell you what's actually the best of all. And this is the most counterintuitive part. When you have a disgruntled customer, and let's face it, we've all had those, you learn so much more than the customer who's high-fiving you and telling you how much they love you. And those are difficult, stressful conversations to have. But, the more that I have them, the more that the long-term pain of future customers like that goes away. So, I just find that there's no substitute for talking to customers.
Well, in a big way on the customer experience side, how we handle it when it doesn't go right is so important. Like if something was wrong and we sent an assembly to New Zealand, I'd fly the team there to make it right and mount it on the helicopter. Because we repaired, overhauled, and manufactured parts to reduce operating costs for commercial aircraft operators globally, fixed wing and rotor wing. Our competitors would never do that. And then the loss leader piece of it, well, why would we do this when there's no scale behind it? Well, if we solve a problem for a customer, they're so thankful and they give us all the stuff that we do want and more opportunities. And our competitors wouldn't do that. They would just look at it like this individual financial transaction. Does it make sense? Yes or no? And they'd wave it off if it didn't. And I'm looking at the bigger picture. I want all of their work and I want them to love the problems that we solve for them. So talk to me about that too. Like, how do you coach companies to change their mindset? Because most don't have that sort of solve these little problems will get you much more. It's a loss leader.
It's tricky because what you're articulating also comes down to short-term versus long-term, right? In the short term, you flying those folks out probably doesn't pencil out on any kind of financial analysis if you're looking at a 90-day or even a little bit longer horizon, right? But when you look at the longer term, then absolutely that can turn into something that is fantastic. But I think that I'm guessing, Lee, that one of the other things that happens is you probably make sure that to point out and educate the customer on what it is that you're doing when you fly that team out, why it's so important to you. And that's where I think people break down in systems, right? So, the classic thing that I saw, and I saw this happen to one of my customers, is it's this idea that ultimately is called Goodhart's law. And Goodhart's law says that when you measure somebody based on their input only, because you know that that input connects to some result, you break the result. And I'll give you a great example. I had this company. It was a Japanese company that had a U.S. presence, and they only brought over CEOs from Japan, and they would ship them out. And so, but unfortunately, they don't know the local markets. So this poor guy comes in, and he's the new CEO of this company, and I won't mention their name. And he says, "I've noticed that our best salespeople send one quote every day. And so I have decided that all of our salespeople will send one quote every day. That is the new rule. Like, all salespeople send one quote a day and we'll all get the same result." Well, you can guess what happened. Every day, every salesperson, no matter what, would you have to send out one quote a day. So sometimes they call up their uncle and be like, "Hey, uncle, I need to have one quote today. I'm just going to send you one. Like, you don't have to sign for anything, but just, I need to send it to you. So just don't freak out when it gets there." Right. And, people would just they started doing random quotes. Well, now it's worthless. Right. And now it doesn't, you violated what was happening, because the good salespeople had enough of the other stuff they were doing to warrant one quote per day. So forcing an input doesn't work. So in your case, my biggest devil's advocate, or the thing you'd have to figure out, is how do we make sure that when we have a disgruntled customer and we're going to send out the A team to go, bolt the piece onto the helicopter, how do we make sure that we're not just instituting that as an input without, also explaining how does that fit into an overall customer experience that makes that customer feel that value so that they do give you all their business? How do we make sure the salesperson goes out and says, "Hey, we realize we screwed up. We're really sorry. We overdid this because that's how much we care about you." Because if you're missing a few of those pieces, if you just send the team out in the dark and they bolt the thing on and they go home and they're like, "Well, I'm going to go to the bar now. I did my job," then you miss the whole big experience that was coming from that. Right. And so then that's when an MBA comes in, looks at the business and goes, "Cut doing that. Let's stop that. That's not working." Right. And so these answers to these problems are never that simple. They have to be done right. But when you think about the whole customer experience that goes along with it, and you really, put in everything to make the customer feel it, that matters. And to me, the gold standard, the last thing I'll say on this topic is the human brain is an emotional decision maker. It makes decisions based on emotion, not logic. I hate that. I hate that about my own brain. I wish it was logical all the time. I'd be a much better chess player if I was. But the thing is that it doesn't. So customer experience is about making customers feel emotions at the moments that matter. And when you can do that, then you create that association so that you can win when the opportunity comes there. Because the reality is, companies who love you will find ways to do business with you. Companies that don't love you will find ways to minimize how much business they do with you, no matter even if you have the best products. And so customer experience is really about that. It's about the emotional side of the delivery far more than it is about, the actual concrete delivery. Got it. Obviously not saying that you don't have that, but that's really where it comes into.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're talking about it, I always think about the holistic relationship, with the customer. And we would make sure quality had a great relationship with their quality department. We'd make sure accounts receivable and payable had a great relationship with their accounting department. The sales team, obviously. And if it rose to a certain level, I would for sure, as CEO, call and get in the middle of it. But I always ran the company and thinking about the three buckets, kind of how I set up this, this discussion here. There's material value creation. Okay, well, our most important number was EBITDA as we're getting ready to sell, because you get a multiple of that. Emotional energy value, that was the X factor for all my leaders. And how do they create this energizing, very productive environment from which everybody creates value? Obviously, you can't, as I've heard you say in podcasts I've listened to you on, you can't stump speech your way really into motivating people long term. But we can, as leaders, create this energizing environment where they own the outcomes and they're running for it. And then this part we're talking about in the spiritual value creation bucket in the context of a business, it's about connectedness. So I just wanted to make sure we did all kinds of things to strengthen relationships between internal team members, our customers, our suppliers, communities that we engaged with. And that we won on that. We got higher multiples by far than anybody else when we sold the businesses that were aerospace related. It just works, and they miss it. If you get customer experience right, where have you seen that impact, the valuations of businesses, or have you seen that?
Oh, it's, the biggest signal for customer experience is customer lifetime value. Those two things I find to be completely connected. And that's really what it comes down to. So, I mean, think about anything. Think about your cell phone, for example. The cell phone companies know extremely well, down to the penny, how much, when you sign up, how much you're likely to produce for them, because they know that, maybe 1% of their customers churn out every month. If that's the case, 1%. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means the average customer lasts 100 months. If it were 2%, then it's 50 months. So they can take how much they're going to get from your subscription, whether you signed a contract or didn't sign a contract, and they know how much revenue is there. And so if they do a good job on customer experience, that number goes up. And if they do a poor job on customer experience, then the churn rises and the lifetime value goes down. Well, it turns out all of us have that, right? Even if you're in a business where you do one-time transactions, you still do repeat transactions with that customer. You still do referrals off of that. So I don't think there's any such thing as a good business that has one-time customers. Everything is a relationship. And so the only question is, how many repeats, how many additional things are going to happen with that customer or the referrals they make from their experience with you to get you to that customer lifetime value. And so you look at the valuation of a company and say, well, how do I put customer experience in here? I look right at the lifetime value and say any kind of customer analysis there. And, when you're selling a company, if you can demonstrate that you have recurring or reoccurring revenue, two slightly different things, then the multiples on that revenue are so much higher than on the one and done customer revenue. And so, because the investor who's buying that business can count on that. They can predict it. They understand that it's coming. And so, customer lifetime value and quality revenue go hand in hand, through lifetime value. And that leads to multiples, on EBITDA.
Yeah. That's a perfect answer. And, part of what I do in my business, ETW, is investing. And it seems like every year I learn something to add to my list when I do my due diligence. But I love talking to, customers for sure, but also partners, suppliers. What's it like to work with them? How do they treat you? Because some will have a different face with a customer than they will with their internal team members or suppliers in there. And customer service goes both ways, internal and external, right? Customer experience.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I think, we have one of our best customers at Motive, and I can't, I'm under NDA on this one, but every year they have something called Partner Day, and they invite all of their key, in our case, we're a supplier to them, all of our key suppliers in, and their CEO presents the strategy for the company and all the places where they would like help over the next 12 months and takes questions from all of their suppliers and really, does the job to coordinate. They give gifts. Normally it's me that giving out all of the different swag and hats and bottles and whatnot, but no, they do that, and they treat their suppliers like they treat their customers. And no surprise, this is a company that's growing by leaps and bounds. They're getting the ROI on the projects they do with us are great because we can be so much more on point with how we deliver for them. And they're doing phenomenally well in the marketplace. So, I think how you treat your suppliers shouldn't be that much different than how you treat your customers. And when you do it that way, you create the loyalty and the trust and the partnership and the commitment that really allows you to be different.
Yeah. And it really helps us through tough times as well in terms of how they deal with us, maybe late payments occasionally as we go through rough spots. And with my different companies over the years, I've had rough spots, and because of the better relationships, everybody worked with us and there were no issues. Along those lines, what has Oracle been like for you, to be a partner with you?
It's they have a different set of things that they have to deal with. I mean, first off, I think that at this point have 150,000 employees at Oracle, and the reality is that they have a lot of turnover. And what's interesting about that is that it creates a shortage of institutional memory. So I can remember a customer engagement, a big win that we had 5 years ago. But how many people at Oracle still remember that win? Not too many. And so the thing is that what you have to realize with a company like them is really about putting in good systems. When you're that big and they're the largest enterprise software company in the world, they have to make sure that they maintain their executive relationships. But after that, they need systems to handle everything else. And they can only rise as high as their systems can take them. And, fortunately, I happen to be a systems company. So, that's not too bad. And they do quite well at that. But it is a different set of problems than if you were, a tenth their size, and things were far more manageable.
Yeah, that's great. So in my businesses, I always try to simplify things so I understand it. I can talk better about it, everybody else understands it, and we can essentially do less better and create more value. I ended up breaking it down into 3 areas. So when I looked at leaders, there were 3 different categories and elements within each. First was leadership, like how you show up and create this energizing, productive environment. And then it was foundational readiness. So at any point in time, are you ready to grow 20%, 30%, whatever that happened to be? And then the third category was your, for lack of a better way to describe it, your management operating system. What are the regular rituals, things that you did to cause consistently the most value to be created? And when I would categorize all my leaders by the elements, red, green, or yellow, in each one of these 3 buckets, wow, was that effective and growing. And it went from 3 employees to 500 plus. When I sold it, keeping it probably would have been an even better option for me. And it was doing that, going from 80 hours a week, never feeling like work. Man, I just loved it. Even when it was super hard, we'd laugh harder. It was so awesome. But at 500 employees, it was less than 15 hours a week of my time to basically manage the business because of those systems and how we held leaders accountable. Where did you end up landing? I've heard you talk a lot about that in other podcasts.
To me, any system is better than no system. And I think that the problem that most leaders have is they get so engrossed in attacking problems that they don't approach it with a systematic mindset first. And I think that's what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs when they hit the, either the 10 million mark or even the 50 million mark is, they've been able to get by solving problems. And that's great. They solve a problem. Next day, there's a new problem. They solve that. But to your point, what you did was, it sounds like you attacked it with a system first. And I have found that, there are a lot of great systems out there. I am a big fan of EOS just because, I think that it's, pervasive and it's quick and it's easy. And so we use EOS at Motive. And EOS stands for the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And that's been really, really terrific for us. Although what I've found is that, once you really start using it, it's worth taking the time to invest in changing that system to optimize it. Because, when Gino wrote that book, he wrote it for everybody, but I only needed to work for us. So attacking our systems and making sure that our systems are repeatable and reliable has been great. So, I think that the 2 levers that I've found for us is, one is having a business operating system like EOS, super helpful to help us get that system out the door. The other thing that I think is, I had to recognize that, what makes my business different at the end of the day is the quality of our consultants. If our consultants at Motive are experts in revenue transformation and in customer lifetime value and how to connect the dots between a business who wants these really wonderful business objectives and the systems that need to be put in place to make that happen, then I can grow. And when that light bulb came on a couple of years ago for us, we realized that there was no shortage of learning management system investment and quality training that we could make that wouldn't produce an ROI. So, what we've done at Motive is spend a lot of time on that. And actually, I do most of the training materials myself, because to me, it's so important to make that perfect for our consultants and to get that so that it's not something where, a lot of us think about learning management system training and we all groan. And it's because the content is really dry. There's no value add there. It's just a bunch of memorization. And it's super boring, right? And so you have to break all those things down and turn that into an employee experience that really turns into a learning management system that brings them value, that makes them feel like they're getting almost like a mini MBA in customer experience, so that they feel like they've got something incredible. And so we've done a lot of work on that. And that has been a game changer because, like you had mentioned with, your positioning for growth, we don't have the luxury at Motive of having 30% excess capacity. Like if I had 30% excess capacity of my consultants, I'd be out of business. I've got to make sure that they're there. So if I grow, it's because we're growing in a stable, repeatable way, but I can then responsibly staff. But then I've got to have an ability to make that staff come on and be performant, very quickly. And so while I hire great people, if you don't have that great learning management to go with it, you can't grow. At least not my business.
Yeah. And I think you and I were saying the same thing. It was, if we had to grow 20% overnight, could you do it? And so they've got things lined up. It wasn't ever about having 20 or 30% excess capacity.
Sure.
We wanted to go right to the end. And when it comes to leadership development, which I think is wildly important, I actually think that 90+% of dollars spent on leadership development in the United States are completely wasted because it's one size fits all. And it needs to be surgical for your business. Like, where does each leader need to develop to create the most value next? And it's different, from a little bit to a lot of it with every single leader out there. And I think your point about management operating systems is exactly the same. So for a lot of companies, they say EOS is amazing. And I know Gino, by the way. And a lot will say it destroyed my business because they weren't culturally ready for it. And then there's OKRs and 40X and scaling up and all this other stuff, and thousands really of, homegrown operating systems. So it has to work for your business. I actually wrote a book called Your Most Important Number. And in there's a management operating system that I created to build my businesses called Mind Management Systems, Most Important Number and Drivers. And it was designed for startup to any scale. And I had, when Jack Welch saw it in 2011, he actually became a business partner with me. And he said, if I was still running GE in its heyday, I would make every single team member use this going through it. And he said, best business management system he'd ever seen. So I think the challenge is, how do we come up with something that catches fire on its own with team members? And that's what I set out to solve for. And I believe that I did. That's the challenge with operating systems. And when you said you modify it, I think when Gino put it together, it was up to 100 employee companies. It really was never designed to go past that. But almost everybody has a story of modifying their operating system to make it work for them. So maybe talk about that a little bit, because processes are great, but the activity isn't the goal. The outcome you're looking for is the goal, as you've been talking about. How do you think about modifying it and not doing the easy button? Woof, I put that in place. I don't have to worry about it again, like your LMS example.
Yeah, well, it gets to having that systems-based mindset that you have and that, you need to have as an executive, because, when you are ready to grow, it can never be about solving a problem. It's got to be about making sure that you are solving the system. And then what that really means, and this is where I love to put my engineering hat back on, is if you think of your business as a giant organic system, right? Then you are ultimately the mechanic who is tinkering with how the system works. And so you are not part of the system. I think that's really important. You are not part of this engine any more than you're part of your car engine. You don't make the wheels move. The engine does. You just press the gas and it goes, right? The same thing is true with your business. You have to be the mechanic that cares, features, and designs new components for the engine, but then don't be part of the engine. And I think that's important. When you do that, then yeah, you're always monitoring the evaluation of the output the system is creating, and that's why it leads to the insights and tweaks. So yeah, to your point, you can't just be like, oh, okay, I implemented that, I'm done. Instead, you're constantly watching how it works. So we just had our 2-day offsite for the year at Motive. And so there is a playbook in EOS for exactly what you need to do in a 2-day offsite. I think this is like our sixth year using that system. And so, when we looked at it, we took the experience that we've had from the previous 5 years and we, modified a couple things. We put a few things and rearranged some stuff. We added a section on our own, took a few things out that we didn't feel were as helpful. And then, and it for us, it really worked really well. So, constantly tweaking it. But then the other key is if you're going to tweak the system, you got to write it down because otherwise it's not a system. It's just, you just broke the system. You didn't actually change the system. So having everything written down in a structured format is probably the last piece of that I think is important.
Yeah. And I think constantly refining the operating system, if you will, for the business, that'll never stop. And it should always be, how do we refine it to create the most value with everything that we're doing? And everything should be done with the intent of creating more value for the business or as a business. And I also think the CEO has to be in the middle of that, not do everything, but has to understand it really well. What are your thoughts on that? I've heard some CEOs say, that's not my thing. I'm just going to hire somebody. And it like literally 90% of the time or more blows up.
Yeah. It depends on how you define the role. So to me, most companies, the CEO needs to be the leader of the company, both inside and outside. And so, when that's the case, I think you have to know everything about that. Just like a mechanic who didn't understand transmissions wouldn't be very good as a mechanic. If you are looking at your business and you're trying to build it and grow it, you better know how all the pieces work and fit it together. I do think there is a limited set of CEOs who are more, of a personality focused on the customer and the street and raising funds. And those CEOs, sure, they can get away with not having it if they have an exceptional person who's on the inside. But I'd say for most CEOs in most businesses, no, that's, I agree with you. And I disagree with CEOs who feel like they don't have to know how their business works. They have to know how everything works, from stem to stern. They don't have to do it, but they have to know how it works.
Yeah. Yes. I think super important. Do you find that most of the clients you work with your team, like their products or services more than their customers do? That's my experience, is most like their own stuff more, and because they don't check in.
I think it's easy to get wrapped up in your own little world. And I'll give you a perfect example. I remember when I was in college, and yes, this is a college story. I had a buddy who lived in Golden, Colorado. So we went to Golden during one of our breaks and we visited the Coors brewing plant. And the thing is that like, when you think about Coors, I think of like a low end beer that's not that good, that like, I don't know, it's just something that sits in the fridge and it's kind of a very commoditized product. But when you go to the Coors plant and you're there, it suddenly becomes sort of like this work of art. Like you're like, oh, and they talk to you about their different products and all the things that went into it. And you can appreciate how they're trying to scale and make it. And you get this appreciation for the product and all the depth and complexity that you don't get when you're at the grocery store and you see it at the corner. You're like, nah, I don't want any Coors. And I think that happens when you go visit companies. And I think when you're in a company, that also happens. You get so enamored with the complexity of what it is that you're doing and how it works and what goes on that I think that you lose sight of that external perspective that your customer will have, where they're just looking at you from the outside with just a thumbnail of what it is that's really going on to make your business run. And that's what you're being judged on. That's when people are making their decisions. They're looking at that. And so, yes, I think people can fall in love with their products and their services more than their customers because they can appreciate what it takes to get in there. And that's a trap. It's a blessing, but it's also a trap.
Yeah, I always like to put myself in the shoes, if you will, metaphorically, of our customers. Like, what would I do to make that company more valuable responsibly over time? And that's helped a ton, like having that perspective. And I just want to stay at the hip. And with my entire team, it's got to be the same thing. How many team members at Motive today do you have?
We're 35.
Okay. That's a good sized team doing that work. Yeah. That's awesome. And then the other business, Content Lion, really interesting. Like best content management system replaced with Oracle content management. So walk through that and your partnership with Oracle and how all that works.
Yeah. So that's kind of a very interesting situation. So, about a year ago, in fact, a year and 3 weeks ago, Oracle put an announcement out that said, that they were going to exit this business. It's a product called Oracle Content Management. Really nice product. Very, very good. But, they had a strategic reason. And so like a lot of companies, they did the responsible thing. They told the customers early, they were very transparent and said, hey, you've got 2 years to go find and migrate to a new solution. We're going to keep the product open for that long. And so now you all know, and they did a great job alerting everybody and letting everyone know. Well, when someone exits a business, that creates a vacuum. And at Motive, we thought, well, let's go find a replacement product for Oracle Content Management. We went out and did research. We did demos. We looked at all the products. But what we found was that there really wasn't a great replacement for that product. There was things in the marketplace that you could use that would do similar type stuff, but they were either very expensive, and I'm talking like 10 times the price, 6 times the price, or they were built on really antiquated old technologies, or you needed 2 or more products to put together in order to get the same functionality you had before with Oracle. And there was just no silver bullet where it said, okay, if we migrate our customers to this other product, that'll be the place to go. So we went to Oracle and said, hey, we'd like to build our own replacement. And, we're going to make sure it has the features and functions and roadmap of everything that you did in your product. Do you have any issue with that? They thought it was great. I mean, they wanted out of that business. And so they wanted a good home for their customers. And so, we built our product. We strategically decided to build it on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is, their alternative to Amazon Web Services or Amazon Cloud and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure Cloud. Oracle's got one, and it's a great one. It's a lot less expensive, and it works really, really well. And so we've been building our product there, and we released it last week. So last week, Content Lion became an official product. We had our first wave of signups. We had 15 companies register, and very excited to start working with those companies. And we turned them on in January. And we're going to start building this up. And then throughout next year is the second year that customers have to migrate off of Oracle Content Management. We'll be working to scale Content Lion and to replace, Oracle Content Management with a solution that's, better, stronger, faster. We recruited a lot of the development people who worked on, Oracle Content Management to help us learn lessons. And so Chris Stone, the general manager from, Oracle Content Management, is an advisor to us. And so, we're building that product out, and we're really excited that we're going to have something that's really terrific. And for people who've never even used content, actually half of our signups have been people who never heard of Oracle Content Management, but heard of us and really would like to start doing the things that we're doing, which is centralizing all of your content so that you can use it strategically in all the places it needs to go. And so that's really exciting as well. So I'm very, very excited about Content Line.
That is such an important category. It's interesting that Oracle would choose to get out of it. I'm sure they had a really good reason for doing that, but it is so important. When I think about the aerospace companies I had, we had to have that big time, all the revisions, the safety, everything that went into it. But just any business, really, you want to change, we're going to call it this now, and it's in, 500 different documents. Just instantly change that, be able to manage all that a lot better, revision, records, all of it. I mean, I think that's what you're going for, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about digital content, I mean, it almost is the business now, right? So if you're an aerospace company like you, I'm sure you had drawings and documents and certifications and logs and all sorts of things that you needed to keep track of at the customer level, at the product level. When you think about marketing, think about all the different times you are thinking, don't we have that testimonial video from 2 years ago? And it's like, I don't know. I think that's on Jimmy's computer. And it's like, oh gosh, where's Jimmy? Oh, he left the company. I mean, there's so much silliness that goes on in big companies around video, around images, around parts and documents, around HR all these different forms of content that we have. And, the solution most companies have is let's put it on the J drive where it just goes to die, And so, being able to have that content searchable, indexable, AI driven, and appropriately accessible is the other big thing too, right? Those are all things that need to happen. And then some of it needs to get shared with partners. Some of it should never be shared. No one needs to see the Colonel's secret recipe, right? But there are definitely things that you need to do with your content. And so, yeah, Content Lion is really designed to do all of the above.
And have you priced it in a way to where whether you're a startup, small, medium, large, you can kind of grow with it and make it affordable?
Yes, I think what we've done is we've come up with a pricing model that I think is very attractive and helps people get into the product. So the first thing is it's not based on users. So whether you have one person or you have 1,000 content writers, they all can be in there with the right access level using Content Land. What instead is it's really based on just how much stuff you're putting in there, right? So if you're putting up to 5,000 assets, it's a fixed price. And then if you need more for the next 5,000, it's a fixed price. And so you're just paying a monthly price based on number of assets. If you want to store some things offline or use our offline archive capability, you do that. Now you don't have to pay for it anymore. So it's really controllable. But really our value as a content engine scales with the amount of content we're storing. And so when we put those things in there for them, we do that. And then you can stream video out of our platform pretty much on it's 25 terabytes of storage, which is great because that equates to about 500,000 minutes of 1080p content. So for most companies, that's way, way more. So that's also fixed as well. So it's a nice, easy model that allows companies to have predictability and really just get the full value out of their content.
Okay. Well, there's a client that needs something like this. So you may have just gotten yourself another customer. So
thank you, Lee. Greatly appreciate it.
Take a look at it. I've heard you talk about stages and lessons learned and all that on different podcasts and, going through your business journey here. But to go a little bit deeper, I look at startups and I say, okay, there's like 4 little phases you go through. There's the idea. There's finding and proving scalable traction. There's packaging to scale, and then there's scale. And all of those stages are really hard. And I actually think the idea stage is by far the hardest mentally to get around. And I see a lot of, we're going to do this. It'll be amazing. And wildly, they raise tons of money and then everybody loses their money. They didn't think through the idea very much. What are your thoughts on that and what would go into it? I thought a lot about it.
I think I agree with you that the idea stage is the most difficult one because to me, when most people talk about vision, the next thing out of their mouth is like a single sentence about what the vision is, right? And so I don't know if that's something that they come up with after the fact because they're, talking about their story and they're just trying to encapsulate something. But to me, a vision is not one sentence, So, if someone was to say, what was the vision for Netflix? And they're like, any movie at any time that you wanted to watch at home, that's not helpful. That doesn't bring anything to me. But to me, a vision probably then has to extend to 20 or more pages of, readable content, not dense, unreadable content that really paints the picture as clearly as so that everybody can see it. And to me, that's what vision really is it's really that ability to see around corners to try to specify down to a level that everyone really grasps. Then you can move people in the right direction. And I found that when it comes to the idea stage, it's hard to do that. It takes a lot of time. Your time is so constrained when you're in that stage that trying to schedule and make time available to get the vision expanded upon to the level that everyone's going to be able to understand and take action on. I think that's the hardest step. And I think where I've failed in the past is when I've not taken that time and just asked somebody with a little arm wave, like, take care of something for me. It's never worked out the way I wanted it to. And it's always fallen right off of a cliff because they just didn't have enough clarity as and they're not mind readers. So they couldn't get done what I needed to get done.
Yeah, it's the launch pad, incredibly important. And we may iterate 3 or 4 times from there, but the more solid the launch pad is, the more effective we can do that. And it seems like a lot of these, especially startup entrepreneurs, they'll sell this utopian state, like these things will be happening and it'll be amazing and the world will be better and all of it. So people invest in that. And I go back and say, well, wait a minute, the idea has to be a believable way to get there. And it's like there's a giant disconnect. I feel like I'm speaking a different language when I'm talking to boards and investors around that. yeah, everybody would love it if this happened. And then one assumption could be that all these other great things will happen when this happens. Human nature doesn't support that. So it's really interesting. It's got to be how we believe we're going to get there and why, going through and the idea piece of it. So I just don't see a lot doing it well. I appreciate your feedback on that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And then proving scalable traction, actually, touching the customers out there, prospective customers, and packaging and testing. I've heard you talk about this category as well. I think we can package and test pretty quickly and efficiently. We don't have to go big. We can do it small to prove it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that people hear the word testing and they think about a laboratory and, some chemistry experiment they did when they were a kid and how, all the conditions were just perfect and just so. And if they can't do that, then it can't be a good test. And really that's just not the case. It's, testing in business ranges. Certainly there are times for that absolute and total precision, but most of the time, that's not what you need to do in order to get a test going. So, perfect example. I love this one example that I heard about Larry Page when he was working on Google Library, and his first test was nothing more than a cell phone on top of a set of books, and then taking pictures just to prove out some ideas about what Google Library could look like and how scalable and how much time it would take to get something done. And I've always remembered that story because it just reminded me that yes, a quick test, whether you're trying to test out an idea, can be something as simple as just making 10 phone calls to 10 customers and trying to figure out if they would be interested in something or not. And that can turn into a good enough starting point to get you directionally correct. And then, of course, you can get into optimized tests and optimized tests beyond that. I've also heard that at Google, they can tell you if they change the tint of the color on their website, whether that's going to result in, more ad clicks or less ad clicks. And so, that level of precision matters there, but the rest of us don't need that level of precision. So I like tests that are quick and directionally correct and find that information gathering is worthwhile. And a lot of people are afraid of making decisions based on something like that, but I think it's much better than intuition.
Yeah, I like, part of what you said there is you ask the question, would you find this valuable and why? And if a bunch say yes, that doesn't mean you have something. Now we have to go prove the experience, right? Because I've had a room full of people say, oh, this is amazing. I would buy it, and not one buy.
Yeah. True. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But it really comes down to incremental testing, right? If you're not afraid to have incremental tests, you gather more data and, I think everybody needs to give themselves a pass on the level of precision on that testing, especially early on. And more testing, is better, even if it's informal.
Yeah. Yeah. In this entire conversation, tons of nuggets everywhere, lots of value. But the most powerful one to me really is spending more time making it urgent that you keep and grow your existing customers, more so even in my view than, getting new, because that formula I think can grow even faster and a lot more profitably. Was there anything interesting that kind of jumped out to you in this discussion?
Oh, lots of things. I think, the idea that if you schedule it, it will happen. And so that also applies to customers and making sure that you double down on them, is great. I think being poised for growth was really an interesting thing as well, and trying to make sure that, we talk about that. And then, I love some of your thoughts, Lee, about systems and how, if you have the systems in place, then you can grow. And, having a systems-based mindset, I think, is a key that a lot of entrepreneurs can lose sight of on a day-to-day basis. A lot of business leaders can lose sight of that on a day-to-day.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of folks have a strategy. They wouldn't say this, but this is what manifests. Hire the best, hope for the best, and tribal knowledge will get us there. It's like, no, it's not going to happen.
Yes. Once you say it out loud like that, oh man, yes, that hurts, but that's true. Yeah. We've all been there. Not the winning formula.
For sure. We're kind of out of time. I had a point where I lost all my business overnight too, and it was a really wild experience. I know you had the same thing. If you ever come back, we can dig into some of that stuff because I think there's great lessons there for all of our listeners. David, if our listeners want to learn more about you, connect with you, where can they go?
DavidGEwing.com is the best place to connect with me. I write a newsletter every month called The Spark, and it has to do with the great things I've seen in customer experience, my latest ideas on that, and best practices. So DavidGEwing.com is great. Otherwise, LinkedIn, always happy to make another connection with someone. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm at LinkedIn/David G. Ewing.
Awesome. And I will definitely subscribe to your newsletter. This has been a great conversation for me. Thank you so much. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, please like and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world.